What's up, music fans of the internet? Welcome to last week's album. I am Kevin.
I'm Derek.
And we are here with another album review. But before we get things started, we'll start like we always do, drinking a beer. Cheers, Derek and everyone at home.
Cheers, Kevin, everyone at home.
I should say sipping a beer. We're not going to drink the entire thing before we start. All right, this week we are talking about a band called Landlady and their new album. Their second LP is called Upright Behavior. A little bit of background on the band: formed in 2011, based out of Brooklyn. Originally, I think, started and led still by songwriter, multi-instrumentalist Adam Schatz. He's played with Man Man, Father Figures, recorded with Vampire Weekend, and Those Darlings, who we hear at last week's album are fans of both those last two for sure. And so Adam Schatz is doing vocal and keyboards. He's also joined by Ian Chang on drums, vocals, guitar, Mikey Freedom Hart on guitar and vocals, Ian Davis on bass and vocals, and Booker Stardrum on drums. There's some background for you. Let's get into what this album sounds like. Derek, what do you think?
Kevin, I think Upright Behavior sounds like a din of indie rock akin to Grizzly Bear, Fleet Foxes, and Tame Impala chasing Portugal the Man through the woods for late rent.
Wow, I enjoy that, and I like the way that sounds. You mentioned four bands. I'm also going to mention four bands, but they're all different. I think Upright Behavior sounds like the nervousness of Talking Heads, the ADD of Tune Yards, the neo-soul of Future Islands, and the grandness of the Flaming Lips, all mixed together. So
I like it.
Yeah, in total there's 8 bands that tell you what this album sounds like, which probably tells you nothing altogether. Let's get into key tracks. Derek, which ones did you like?
Kevin, I have Above My Ground and The Globe.
All right, I am going with Under the Yard and Maria. So why don't you kick us off? I think Above My Ground comes first out of those four.
Yeah, Above My Ground, opening track. It starts with this dreamy key riff, which abruptly transitions to this plodding snare bass drum beat, lonely guitar strikes, and lead vocals. The song really builds instrumentally as it continues. And then it kind of shifts into it exposes this unorthodox song structure as I kind of interpret it. You know, it kind of goes, the chorus and verse, which are kind of simultaneous, breaks into these lush instrumental segments, just featuring just a large array of instruments where no, individual sound really carries the melody. The only constant is kind of this plodding drum beat. It really builds musically. Even crescendoing at one point as the singer laments losing love and affection for another person, and it really kind of ends in this just repetitive, and I need you always now, always, always, just with this lush instrumental sound backing it. It just really kind of grew on me as the song just kind of grows from this really small key riff, just expands.
Yeah, I also dug that song because of its kind of slow build. I know what you're saying, Derek. But to counter your Above the Ground, or Above My Ground, I'm going to go with Under the Yard. This one has some very affected organ sounds. Almost to me sounds like this hollow gospel choir, which is a really cool effect. We get these weird, fun lyrics, rackety drums, layered, affected vocals. And then in the next movement, Derek, you mentioned unorthodox song structure. They do that a lot. It almost feels like each song is a symphony in different movements or parts. But here in this next second movement on this track, it gets very dreamy with spacey guitar, echoing vocals, a soft sort of droney organ. And at the end, it all comes together with pinging organ, popping double drums, and even more voices. This one really kind of reminded me of Tune Yards style and really interesting lyrics. As I mentioned, here's one for you. Next to the tomato seeds is where I'll count my sheep. I'll let you think about that one. But yeah, Derek, tell us about your next key track, The Globe.
Yeah, Kevin, when I heard that lyric, I was like, don't sleep in the shed with your, equipment and tools. That was my first impression. But we're talking above and below ground, and I'm just going global here. Gonna take the 10,000-foot view here of my next key track, the globe. Kevin, I really like how you mentioned how a lot of these songs just kind of are more a string of movements. This one really encapsulates that. The first, it kind of opens with this guitar riff, which in itself is kind of two very separate sounds, kind of this opening bouncy legato electric guitar riff, and then it shifts into these just staccato punches. Just extreme contrast here. The chorus features softer, reserved guitar solos. The singer and once again backing chorus kind of croon, spinning out of control, heading towards a black hole, living under stars. Who knows how far we are from home? I just thought that those were some really interesting lyrics. At the 4:30 mark, it just, once again kind of goes into a completely different direction. The lyrics are just very stream of consciousness almost, and it mentions a lot of geographic locations, Idaho and the Ivory Coast, just to name two.
Sure. If we're going to keep going with this motif, you're going global, I'm going to go to the southern hemisphere for the next key track called Maria. I really like its sort of raw, scuzzy guitars juxtaposed against these really warm vocal harmonies, and that weird contrast there is really, really nice and awesome. We also get really heavy tribal drums, thumping bass, and this blasting guitar solo that sounds a lot like a saxophone. Maybe it was a saxophone if Derek, as you mentioned earlier, played saxophone for Vampire Weekend, but I think it's guitar. Either way, it sounds awesome. And overall, we get this African sort of vibe and influence, especially with those drums, like I mentioned, and the rhythm, and just one of the strangest, catchiest serenades I've ever heard, and I really enjoyed it. So, best lyrics. Derek, what do you got?
Kevin, I'm taking one from a song called Washington State is Important. And they say, I've separated from the brand, I cut the clipboard from my tired hands, write my name and sew it on my shirt, and I go to work. Just two kind of couplets here, which I really thought just really very vividly kind of described this, the character's mentality of, heading back to the grindstone, and I just really kind of liked the rhyme scheme couplets here.
Yeah, that was a nice little slice of life song. My key track, however, is from Dying Day, and it goes, Dying Day, what am I supposed to do about it? I thought this really exemplified the album's very deep thoughtfulness on one hand against this sort of underlying levity that keeps it all from getting too dark and too dreary. There's this optimism throughout that I think you can hear despite some of these really intense lyrics, if you will. And now, overall rating. Derek, what are you giving?
Kevin, I've been struggling with this all day, but I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I thought the sound was pretty fresh. Clearly, there's a lot of different kind of genres and influences going on here, as are just wide degrees of bands we referenced in our sounds like kind of alluded to earlier. However, I really kind of dug their ability to shift between these almost moments of musical chaos or musical meandering, I have somewhere in my notes here, and then to bring it right back to this catchy melody that they introduce often early on, and then when they bring it back out of this mist of sound, it makes a good point. It just is really strong. The lyrical themes were kind of hard to follow at times, but as we kind of alluded to, they would be kind of straddle the line, go dark and sometimes, but then have this, brief moment of hope to kind of change the whole tone of the song lyrically. So a lot of really good things going on here. That's why I'm giving it 4 out of 5.
All right, we are agreeing, Derek. Not only do we both compare this album to 4 bands, we're also both giving it a 4 out of 5. I dug it for the symphonic song structure, like we mentioned earlier. They have this knack for turning on a dime in a song, and it doesn't feel too jarring or out of place. Some may find that variety and sort of schizophrenia a little bit taxing. It takes some getting into and sinking your teeth into this album. But I think ultimately it's worth it, and they're really good at getting big and also really small, oftentimes during one song, which is cool. And they have this sort of existential yet universal lyricism, very experimental, but also very catchy. And yeah, it feels like a band that would put on an amazing live show, jumping all over the place and really tearing these songs apart in the different directions they go. So there you go, 4 out of 5 from Derek and I. That's an 8 out of 10 combined because we're good at math. And we hope you like this album. Don't forget to subscribe to us here on YouTube. Check out the album for yourself. See what you think. See what 4 bands you could compare it to yourself. And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter and all the others. So, as always, I'm Kevin.
I'm Derek.
And we are last week's album. Cheers, guys. Have a good week.